In this video, I'm going to be modeling for you a few different concepts for third grade graphing. We're going to be looking at how to create a graph from data, and then we are also going to be analyzing and interpreting the graph to solve single-step and multi-step problems. So we want to be able to take data to create a graph, but then we also want to be able to think about the data. So first here, we're going to create our graph. So I have this data here about favorite summer activities. And so some of the choices were swimming, camping, kayaking, or riding your bike. And then this is the data that we got in tallies. And we've talked about how graphs help us see data more quickly and to make comparisons more quickly. So that's why we're going to put it into a graph. So down here, this is the sequence that I like to do for my graphing because they kind of depend on others. So I can't make my interval unless I have a scale. And then I can't put my bars into the graph unless I know kind of how to organize them based on numbers in the intervals and scales. So this is kind of the way that I like to do it. So here, I'm going to take this data and put it into my bar graph. I'm going to first start with labels. I'm going to have my bars going horizontally, or vertically. You could also have them going horizontally. It doesn't matter. You would just flip your labels. So here, I'm going to label that this is where my activities will be. And I'm going to have swimming, and I could just put an S for swimming for today. I'm going to do a C for camping, a K for kayaking, and a B for biking. Now, if I had more space and time, I would actually write out the words, but for today, I'm just going to label them that way. Now, I also need a Y-axis label. This is where my numbers are going to be as my bars are growing. So my numbers are about the people, the students that were giving their choices. So over here, I'm going to put that these are the number of students. So the bars are going to show the number of students that liked the activity. All right, so now that I have my labels, and I have to have one more label here. That's the title of the graph. So it's going to be favorite summer activities. Okay? If we don't have labels on our graph, people are going to see our data, but they're not going to know what the data is representing. So labels are very important for people who are reading our graph and to make sure that the information we put on is accurate. All right, now that I have my labels, now I need a scale. A scale is the range that our numbers and our bars will fit into. So what I like to do is I like to find my numbers here. So I have 12 people liking swimming, 6 people liking camping, 8 people liking kayaking, and 3 people liking biking during the summer. So my scale is always going to start at 0, and then the range is going to be high enough so that all of my data can fit. If I do 0 to 10, not all of my data is going to fit in there. Swimming wouldn't fit in. So I could do 0 to 12 and make my very last number my highest point in my data, or I could make it, a more friendly number, a number that's a little bit easier to work with and divide up for our interval, which you'll see in a moment. So I'm actually going to choose 0 to 20 for this one. If you chose 0 to 15 or 0 to 12, that would work also. You just want to make sure that your scale will fit all of your data. So I always look at my highest number in my data point, and then I either use that or a number that's friendly to it. And by friendly, we say works well with other numbers. So I'm going to do 0 to 20. So that is my scale here. Now I'm going to make an interval. An interval is when I look inside my scale and I divide it up. So I'm going to divide this up. I could divide it into 5s. I could divide it into counting by 2s. I could divide it into counting by 10s. I could do dividing it by 4s because 20 works well being divided by 4s, 5s, 2s, and 10s. So I'm just going to go ahead and I think choose, I'm going to just go ahead and do 2s. 2s work pretty well, and I don't have to do a lot of them to get to 20. All right, so I'm going to put 10 here so that I know that that's halfway, and then I'm going to do a 2, 4, 6, and an 8, and 12, 14, 16, 18, and then there's my 20. And I'm going to label those. There. So now here's my scale and it has an interval of 2. I've broken up my scale into steps of 2, intervals of 2. Now, the reason that this is important is because sometimes you have really large scales. Sometimes you might have a scale of 0 to 500, and you don't want to have to make 500 little marks. So you kind of divide it up so that it's a little more efficient. So you're not spending your whole time making all of those little marks. All right, now that we have our interval, now we can come to the fun part, which is putting the bars, putting the data in. So swimming here, I need to make a bar that has a height of 12 to show that 12 people liked swimming. Now, because that is one of my interval marks here, it needs to be right there, okay? Camping is 6 people, so I'm going to make my line there at the 6 and draw my bar. Kayaking was 8 people, so that should look a little bit higher than camping. And then riding my bike had 3. Okay, well, I don't see a 3 here, so that's where I have to use my knowledge of knowing that 3 is in between 2 and 4. So my bar needs to be a height of between 2 and 4. Not quite 2, not quite 4. Let me double check that there. Perfect. All right, so now I've created my graph from my data. Now I'm going to interpret it. I'm going to actually use my graph. So here I have this problem here. How many fewer people liked kayaking than swimming? So I need to think, is this a joining question, a separating question, or a comparing? Well, it's how many fewer like kayaking than swimming, so it's a comparing question. So I have kayaking and I have swimming. Kayaking is 8 people. Swimming is a longer bar because it is 12 people. And when I'm comparing, I'm trying to find the difference. So I'm going to use the operation subtraction. So 12 minus 8. All right, so I know that that is a difference of 4. So 4 fewer people like kayaking than swimming, or 4 more people like swimming. All right, now let's look at this problem down here. Which activities are more popular, land activities or water activities? Well, if I look at it first, it doesn't say land or water. This is where I have to think a little bit harder. The land activities isn't just camping, isn't just riding my bike, it's both. So I actually need to add camping and biking together to get my land. So camping would be 6 and biking would be 3. Okay, so 9 people liked my land activities, but the question also has to do with the water activities. Well, there's no water activity, but that's the swimming and the kayaking together. So if I do swim plus kayak, that will give me my water activities. So that's 12 plus 8, which gives me 20 people liked the water activities. So now the question is, which activities were more popular, land activities or water activities? Well, the land activities were 9 people and the water activities were 20 people. So looking at my information here, I can see that my water activities were more popular. Now you'll see that this was actually a multi-step problem. I had to do 2 different equations in order to think about the question here, whereas this was a single step. So when I look at all of these concepts here, all 3 of them are part of 3rd grade expectations. I need to be able to use data to create a graph, and I also need to be able to solve single and multi-step problems. So go ahead and practice these strategies when you are working with graphs.